Hello, everyone. Welcome to the product demo on how to build native apps in Retool. I'm seeing folks are trickling in, so maybe we can give folks a couple of minutes to start joining. In the meantime, I just want to give a quick overview of what Retool Mobile is and what you can do with it. So Retool Mobile is a new product that we've released this summer. It allows you the ability to build native mobile applications with the drag and drop interface really quickly. And today we'll be walking through a classic use case of ours, which is field workers that are on the move that want to do things on the fly. In this case, we'll be focusing on an office management use case, which will be managing snacks inside of an office and being able to handle requests, check on different kitchens at the office, and resupply and restock. So this can be generalized out for a lot of our other use cases, things like inventory management in warehouses or site inspection for going to different site locations, or even just general management of different things and being able to look at kind of a dashboard on the fly and managing requests. So a couple of call outs before we get started. First thing is that please leave any questions in the chat to the right-hand side. We have team members here that will be answering questions as we go. And feel free to also just ping us afterwards if anything is required. So we'll give it one more minute and we'll get started. But thanks all for joining. Sweet. So let me share my screen and we will get started. So this is Retool Mobile. This is what it looks like. We'll be diving in today and building an application over the course of about 30 to 40 minutes, hopefully. At the end, we'll have time for more live Q&A and discussion for about 10 to 15 minutes. So we're going to walk through the setup of getting started with Retool, how to connect to different resources, quick overview of some of the settings that you might want to take a look at if you're starting to build inside of Retool. Then we're going to jump into building the mobile application and building out that snacks manager that we had talked about earlier. And finally, have some time for Q&A at the end. So what is Retool Mobile? So for those of you that have used Retool Web is a drag and drop interface that allows you to build internal tools very quickly. So that means that we give you a lot of components like tables, forms, charts, etc. And you can put together applications in a matter of hours rather than days, months, weeks, etc. So we've brought that now to Retool Mobile, and we're super excited about it. So this is built on top of React Native. It gives you the capability to drag and drop different UI components that are typical for mobile. So things like collection views, where you can list out different elements, and then buttons, forms, etc., and get a mobile application live within a couple of minutes. So today we'll be walking through building an end-to-end application in about 40. So let's dive in. So this is Retool Mobile. This is Retool overall, sorry. And you can see all the different applications on the homepage. And when you get started with Retool, there's a lot of different things on the page. And so we'll kind of take it slow and walk through some of these different components. So this is the apps page. This is where you're going to be able to see all the different applications that your team has built. And here's the resources page. So when you build out applications, the most important thing is getting access to all the data sources that you have. And so whether that's a GraphQL API, maybe it's a SQL server, maybe it's BigQuery, maybe it's S3 buckets, Firestore, anything like that. So the really good news is that Retool has pretty much all these connections built in from the get-go. So you don't really have to worry about custom Node.js libraries or importing Python libraries. We give you all of that functionality for free. And for each one, we've also added specific settings to configure. So today we'll be using a GraphQL API, which I already have configured. But just to give a quick overview of some of the other resources that we have available, we have things like MongoDB, where you can list out the host and the connection format and the port here, or for something like a Snowflake, we support different authentication schemes like basic authentication or OAuth, etc. We even have a Google Sheets connection, which allows you to sign into your Google account and just get access to all of the Google Sheets available on your account just right out of the gate. So coming back, I'm going to quickly give an overview of the GraphQL API that we have. So this is a GraphQL API, all test data, and it's going to contain all the information about the snacks and the offices that we have today. Last thing I want to quickly touch on is settings. There's a bunch of different settings available inside of your Retool instance. We have user group permissions available if you're on certain plans of Retool, and this allows you to create role-based access permission groups and kind of control things on a fine-grained level. So you can click in and look at different applications and basically limit access to specific apps. So let's dive into the mobile application. Let's get started. So we're going to create a new mobile application, and we're going to call this the Office Snacks application. So give me 1 second. Going to also pull up some information here, just so I have access to the API. Great. So let's get started by just giving a quick overview of what the mobile editor experience looks like. So in the center of the page, you can see a preview, live preview of your application. This is essentially exactly what your app is going to look like. On the right-hand side, we have the configuration panel. So these are going to be all of the settings available to you as you click around through your application. So if I click on a screen, I'll get access to different props and settings available on the screen. If I go to a heading component, I can configure things like the value, etc. And generally speaking, if you're modifying anything about a particular component, you'll do that on the right-hand side. And on the bottom is the query builder. So this is your window into the outside world. This is where you can write different queries against all of your APIs. And this is also where you can write custom JavaScript logic as well. So anything that's business logic, I'd put into this query editor. The last thing is the left-hand side, which contains two different panels. One of them you can toggle on and off. And this just gives you a way to navigate through the application. This leftmost panel is actually really useful. It's kind of hard to find because we turn it off by default. But if you're using Retool for the first time and you want to get an understanding of different APIs and what data is available to you from different components, you can keep this left panel open and click around, and it'll give you a good idea of what attributes each of these things have. So first, let's get started by fetching some data. Maybe on screen 1, we want to get a sense of where our offices are. So let's go ahead and write a resource query, and this is going to be pointed at our GraphQL API. And inside of this GraphQL API, I have a query called get offices. So I just want to get all of the offices. And inside of the offices, I want the name, I want the maybe the state, the image, and the street address. Let's just get all these different properties. For those of you that haven't used GraphQL, it's an alternative to REST-based APIs. There's a couple of advantages in the sense of you can specify exactly what output you get from different fields and objects. So you're not overfetching data. Also, it gives you the response exactly how you've requested it. So in this case, if we take a look at data, we can see all these different properties here. So one thing that you'll notice is that the data here of the request of the query contains the key offices, which is an array of these different offices that we want. So what I'm going to do is actually add a transformer. So transformers are really important concepts inside of Retool. They basically allow you to add manipulations of your data on top of the existing data set. So in this case, I just care about the offices, and I don't necessarily want to always be doing query2.data.offices. So if we take a look at the left-hand side, you'll see query2.data.offices. I just want the offices. So I'm going to do return data.offices. And what that'll do is flatten it out so I don't have to do that extra step of accessing the data in the future. So now that we have our offices, I'm going to go ahead and rename my query, and I'll go ahead and call this offices page get offices. And now let's plug it into the UI. So inside of Retool, there's a really universal concept of this double curly brackets. You can see it in our defaults everywhere. Basically, the double curly brackets, anything inside of it evaluates to JavaScript. So it allows you to dynamically make modifications to data, do string manipulation, all that stuff for free, basically. So in this case, I'm going to plug into the data source will be the get offices query. You'll see that we're starting to see the two different offices, the name and the address. Let's go ahead and add an image just to make this look a little bit nicer. So I'm going to change the media type to the image. And we've already intelligently picked up on the image URL. And so, and this is true for Retool in general. We try to make it as easy as possible to build out these really pretty UIs. And we'll try to do things on our end to make that as simple as possible. So now that we have this list of offices, maybe we want to play around with the styling a little bit. So we only have two options. It's not that much. So I'm going to just make it a card list so it looks a little bit nicer. And I'm going to configure the aspect ratio here to be a little bit smaller just so we can see both offices on the page. So there's a couple of things I don't like about this page. First, the screen one is really not doing it for me. And then also the tabs don't really make a lot of sense. Let's go ahead and modify those. So for the screen one, I'm going to go ahead and change the title to offices. And I also don't like this icon for offices. So maybe I'll find a building. And you can see the tab bar is being updated here. I'll leave screen two a little bit later once we kind of think about what the screen two should be. And the last thing is it's a little bit black and white. So I'm going to add in some color. If you go into the top right corner here, you'll find the app theme setting, and you can go ahead and set a color for your page. So in this case, I kind of like this orange color, so I'll go ahead and apply it. And now you can see that, voila, we have a nice colored, beautiful application, at least to land. So let's talk about interacting with the UI. So now that we have these two cards that are pointed at these different offices, maybe I want to actually click in to one of these and navigate to a detail page. So we already have an event handler in our default page here, and you can see that on press, what this does, it will navigate to a different screen. And which screen is it? Well, it's a detail screen. So we're pretty much good here, and we can test this out. So if I click on the screen, now it's by default going to the detail screen, and we get this nice kind of list and then detail dynamic going on. So I really like that. Excuse me. Great. So I'm just going to do a little bit of polish here. It's always good to rename your components as you go, just so, especially as the applications become more complex, you can kind of keep in the back of your mind, and it's less confusing than something like collection view one. So in this case, I'm going to call this offices page, offices collection. So now that we click in, now I want the detail page to contain the image of the office, some general details, and then maybe a list of kitchens available inside the office. So this image here is referring to the collection, and then there's the selected item property. So if you think about when we clicked on one of the offices, we're selecting one of them. So in this case, there's going to be the image URL property. And so now we can test this out. If I click on New York City office, now we get the New York City office image. And I can do some modifications, like make this a little bit smaller. So it's taking up less of the page. And I can make it rounded, but it looks a little bit weird. So I'm going to keep it gritty. Awesome. So I'm going to do some cleanup here. I'm going to call this the office detail, and I'll call this background image. And then here I'll call this office detail name. And maybe let's add in one last text component, which will be the address. So I'm going to use the double curlies again. I'm going to reference the offices page, offices collections, the collection view that we clicked on. And I'm going to click on the selected item, and I'm going to click on the street address. So now we have the 915 Broadway. The other thing that is really cool is I can chain these together. So I can add a space here, paste again, and this time maybe I want the state. And then I want to add a comma in between, and now we have kind of a nice street address and the state. So now that we have this office, let's go ahead and write another query. Let's fetch some more data. So this time, instead of the offices, I want to get the kitchens inside of an office. So I'll go ahead and call this query get kitchens of office. Here, I'm going to define a variable inside of GraphQL, which will be office ID. I'll call this UID. And I will get all of the kitchens, and I'll add a where clause where the office ID is equal to the office ID that we pass in. And for the kitchens, maybe I want the name of the kitchen, and maybe I want to get the number of requests. So I'll do request aggregate and get just the count of all the requests for that kitchen. Sweet. So maybe we also want the floor of the kitchen, just to get a sense of that as well. So here for the office ID, I'm going to go ahead and reference again the office that we selected from that offices collection. So here I'm going to do selected item.id. And I might have forgotten to get the ID of the office here. So I'm going to go ahead and save and run this. Get the office ID, go back home, click on Ham's building, and then just to double check that we have all the attributes that we need, I'm going to go here and click on the collection and look at our selected item, and now we have an ID. So let's go to the query 2. This should now be valid, and I'm going to call this get kitchens of office. So maybe office detail get kitchens of office. Great, so it's working. And just like before, I really only care about the kitchens. So I'm going to add another transformer here and return the data.kitchens. And we should be good to go. So we can see a list of the different kitchens, which floor they're on, as well as how many requests they currently have. So let's go ahead and add in another collection view. And this time I'll do a list collection. And I'll point it at the data source that we just defined. So now we have a list of all the kitchens. And for the body, I'm going to go ahead and type out maybe item.floor, which is kind of the floor of the office. And upon second thought, I think maybe this is a little bit redundant since we have the floors and the names already. So instead, what I'll do is I will look at the number of requests. So request aggregate, aggregate account requests. Great. And I'm going to go ahead and change this to a card view, or actually let's do list and then elevated. So now we have the drop shadow around each of these options. So finally, if I click into one of these kitchens, I probably want to look at all of the requests that are currently available. So let me go ahead and create another resource query here. And here it's going to be one last one for now. And it's going to be get the requests. So I'm going to call this kitchen query get kitchen requests. And here I'm going to get the kitchen ID. And I'm going to do requests and where the kitchen ID is equal to the kitchen. I'll call this kitchen ID. Great. And inside of this kitchen, I'm going to go ahead and get the, maybe let's get the quantity of snacks requested. Maybe I want to get the snack name and the unit cost. and the snack ID. And then let's also get some information about who requested it. So let's get the employee's first name, last name, and profile image URL. And I think we should be good for now. So the kitchen ID. So last time we used the office collection view to get the selected ID. Also, thank you, Ronan. Just gave me a charger. Notice my battery is low. So on the first screen, we clicked at a particular office and referenced the office collection view selected ID. In this case, we're going to be using our new collection view, and I'm going to give this a better name. I'm going to give this kitchen collection view. So this time when we click on something, we actually want to reference whatever we click on for this collection view. So I'm going to reference kitchen collection view dot selected item dot ID. And if I add an event handler, then this will be valid. So let's go ahead and do that. So I have this new collection view, and basically I want on-click to navigate to another screen. So kind of two layers of nesting in terms of the details page. So I'm going to go ahead and create one more screen, and this is going to be kitchen requests. I create that screen, and for now, let's not do anything with it. I just want to navigate to it. So I'm going to click into this office. I'm going to get the kitchens. And sorry, this preview is very small in the middle, but you can see here are the different kitchens. I'm going to click on this collection view, and now let's go ahead and on press, I want to navigate to the screen that I just created, which is the kitchen request screen. So if we try that, if I click here, now in the kitchen request screen, and it's empty, but we're about to populate it with one last collection view. So now for the kitchen collection view, I'm noticing that the ID is null. So let's do some quick debugging. So inside of this page, I'm not getting the ID. So when I click on it, it's not necessarily giving me that detail. So now if I click in, now query 3 should run, and we should get a list of requests. Great. And just like before, I only want the request. So I'm going to do one last transformer here and do data.requests. So if I click into one with requests, I should now have a data set of 2 requests coming in, which I do. So Bill wants cold brew, and then Liza wants Cheez-Its. So let's go ahead and display that. So here, let's add in a list collection. And this time, instead of query 3, let's call this kitchen detail get requests. And let's plug that into this new collection view and call this item.snack.name and item.quantity. So for each of the rows in this request table, I want to get a sense of what snack they want, and also how many snacks they want. And for the image, this time let's go ahead and do employee.profile image URL. So now we can see the person that requested it. We can see how many of each snack they requested. And maybe I'm someone who does office operations and I have a specific snack budget I need to follow. So it might be helpful for me if I got a sense of how much this request cost. So we're going to be using a library called Numbro. So kind of pro tip here. So inside of Retool, we include some really important libraries that make your life a lot simpler if you're working with dates or you're working with currencies. So dates, we have moments, and for currencies, we have Numbro, and these help you kind of simplify some of the formatting that you need. So I'll show that here. So inside of the body, we don't have a street address. Instead, I want to actually get the total cost of this order. So what I'm going to do is do some simple math inside of JavaScript. So I'm going to take the cost of the snack, and I'm going to multiply that by the quantity of the request. And this is in cents, so I need to divide by 100. So now I have a nice dollar value, but I want to add the number sign, the dollar sign in front. So I'm going to reference numbro, wrap it around my value, and do a dot format currency. And if we zoom in here, I'm going to close out all the panels. You can now see that we have the dollar sign in front of the requests. Great. So now that we have a list of our requests, maybe we want to do something with them. Maybe if we think about from a user perspective, maybe I am an office manager, or maybe I'm the person in charge of filling out the stacks. So I might use this mobile application to go into each kitchen, check on the requests, and fulfill them. So maybe I have the supplies and I look at what people want and fulfill them. So what we can do is maybe allow users to click into this kitchen and be like, okay, we have these two requests, and you know what? I just finished them. Feels great. So let's go ahead and add a action type to this collection view, and I'm going to make it a checkbox. So I'm going to give users the ability to go ahead and click on these different requests, and maybe I want there to be a button that allows me to maybe say mark as complete. So I just came in and fulfilled these orders. So now we're going to start getting into the real power of Retool, which is the write back capability. So we can write back to any of your APIs, any of your SQL servers, any of your data warehouses, etc., and allow you to write those API calls and hook that into buttons. So in this case, what I'm going to do is create a Graphql query. This one's going to be a mutation. So I'm going to call this mutation complete orders or complete request. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and have the different request IDs. So I'm going to do, let's see, complete requests many. So let me go ahead and write this complete update requests many. And let me look up the API real quick. I did finish this before. So let me just go ahead and paste this in. So complete requests. So here I'm taking in a change set, which takes in all the different arguments, and then I return out the affected rows. So inside of the change set, I'm also just going to paste this in. So basically, this is going to be a little bit complicated. I'll try to walk through the thought process here a little bit. So inside of GraphQL, you can kind of define a variable as whatever I need to update the request table. And there's going to be a mutation type called update request many, which allows me to basically put in all of those updates and just bulk do an update at once. So what I'm going to do is create a standalone JavaScript transformer to help me define what this change set should look like. So in this transformer, I basically want to take a look at all of the selected rows in this collection, and then write an update statement for each row. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to define the indices or selected checkboxes as, and for this collection view, we have an attribute called the suffix value by type by index. And I would know this by clicking over here, looking at the left-hand panel, and taking a look at what all of these different attributes look like. So in this case, the suffix value by index seems to map to the different checkboxes that I have. So you can see that when I have both of these, that the suffix value by index is both true right here. And if I unselect my first one, then it's false. And we also have documentation to help with discoverability of some of these attributes. So anyways, now we have an array of Boolean values that correspond to whether or not these items have been checked or not. So what I'm going to do is for each of the items that have been checked, I'm going to create a change set record that I'm going to use in my GraphQL mutation. So I'm going to do const change set is equal to an empty array. and for equals 0, I is less than the collection view 1 dot data dot length, and then I plus do a quick for loop on the index. So I'm going to check that the selected checkboxes. So if selected checkboxes of I is true, then I can go ahead and add that as a mutation in my change set. So I can do change set dot push, and what this is going to look like is, I believe ID is equal to the and let's go ahead and maybe get the element of the data of that particular row. I'm going to do const row data is equal to the collection view 1 dot data of I. So that's the data. So this row data here will be Kirkland cold brew, and if it is checked here, then I'm going to go ahead and get the ID from that row data is equal to row data dot ID, and then I can do a set. I'm going to change the status to completed. So let's go ahead and save this and preview this. Looks like it's not working, so we might have to do some debugging here. So I'm going to flip over to the one I know works, just so you don't spend too much time here. But it's the same concept. So I'm going to go ahead and flip over the request to collection view 1, and then the data, and here we go. So it's the same code. I get all the data from the collection view, and I get the checkbox's value. And for each element in the for loop, I'm checking if the checkbox is true, and then I'm pushing it to the change set array. So let's go ahead and save that and preview it, and it looks good. So I'm going to now plug this back into my update query, and so I'll call this transformer1.value. So let's go ahead and save that, and I'll call this kitchen detail complete requests. And here I'll call this kitchen detail transform requests. You'll notice that I've been prepending my query names with the page that's associated with it. I find that's helpful because while you're auto-completing inside of Retool, it's helpful to kind of just type the page name and just have it kind of filter down that list for you. Otherwise, a couple of other strategies is to use a folder, and you can organize your queries inside of this folder as well. So you can create a folder for each page, and then queries inside of those nested folders. I like to do both, actually, have the folders for pages and do naming that's also page prepended. But you'll find a style that you like, hopefully. So great. So now we have a GraphQL query that successfully completes all the requests that we mark as complete. So now I want to kind of plug in more complex business logic. First thing I want to do, I don't want to show requests that are already completed, right? So I'm gonna, if they're already complete, then they're kind of wasting screen space there. So I'm going to go ahead and add another where clause here, and I'll do the status is not completed. So now when I save and run this, it looks like one of them was already completed, in which case I'm glad it disappeared from the page. Now the second thing I want to do is, once I mark something as complete, I want to refetch the data. So I've just changed the rows here on the requests, and I want to kind of refresh this page after I've mutated the data. So what I'm going to do is queries also have event handlers, and in this case, I'm going to trigger the get request query and go ahead and do that on success. So once I mark a request as complete, I'll refresh the page and hopefully it'll disappear. So the last thing I want to do is plug this into the user interface. So for the buttons, on the click of the button, I want to trigger my complete requests query. So I think this is pretty much all coming together. If I click on this page, I click on this request and click mark as complete, you'll see that the query is running, and let's see what it said. So it says that it did indeed mark this row. So let's go ahead and verify. Oh, So I need to basically add a D here. So right now this status is completed. So we filtered on completed, but I marked it as complete without the D. So now that we've kind of made this modification, if I go ahead and try again and mark as complete, there we go. So it's now clearing out the request. So quick summary of what we've kind of gone through and what we've done so far. Sorry, my charger is falling off. Oh man. Okay. So quick summary of what we've done so far. So we've kind of walked through a couple of different patterns. A lot of them have been list out items, click into a detail page. So for the offices, we created a card list. And once we click into card list, we're fetching another list, which is a list of kitchens, and we're clicking into those kitchens, and we're able to see different requests. The important concepts here are using transformers to kind of manipulate data and massage data before you render them on the screen. One pattern that we see typically with a lot of folks as they get started is they put too much business logic, custom logic in these double curlies on the component level. We would encourage you not to do that. So put as much as you can business logic wise into this code section on the bottom. So that way your queries and so that way your components are as simple as possible. They're directly referencing things that you've done already inside of things like transformers or things like queries. The other thing that we've walked through is how to attach event handlers to different components. So on click, how do I navigate to different pages? How do I trigger queries? That's also a very important concept inside of Retool, and it's how you connect between the UI layer and the query layer. And the last thing is keep the left panel open while you're developing inside of Retool. Just because if you're unfamiliar with some of the properties that are exposed, this can help you kind of do that kind of detective work. Be like, oh, I have these checkboxes. Where actually are those values living? How do I reference them when I'm trying to write my code? So next, we will be writing a form to be able to submit requests. And for those of you that have warehouse management use cases, you can imagine that there's requests that are asked between different warehouses transferring. Maybe there's different shipments that need to be out for delivery. For those with site inspection, maybe your users will use this app to request inspection or maintenance. And then you will have this first page that we built out for your employees and your workers to go on site and validate those things. So I want to be mindful of time a little bit and check on the chat and see if we have any questions. Liza, Dave, have you seen any questions that we should answer maybe while we have some time left? Okay, looks like most of the questions have been answered in chat. Thank you, team. So what I'll do is let's try to speed run the last part of this, which will be submitting requests for the snack equipment. So for screen 2 right now, so for screen 1 is going to be offices. Screen 2, let's go ahead and make that a request screen. So what I'm going to do is make this a list of your own requests, and then I'm going to go ahead and add in one more screen, which will be add request screen. So this screen is going to be a simple form. So my request is going to include maybe a select, which will allow you to select for the office. And then beneath the office, I'll allow users to select which kitchen they want the snack to be. I'm going to add one more select in for what snack they want. And finally, I'm going to add in a number input for how many, so quantity. So for the offices, we already have the offices query. So what I can do is take the offices from the offices query that we have and do a map and get the IDs as a value. And then I can labels take the name of the offices. So now if you click here, you can see Hems Building and New York City office. So let's clear out the default value there. For the kitchens, let's basically get a query that will get all kitchens for any of the for the selected office in the select dropdown. So let's go to GraphQL, and I will do query get kitchens of office, and this will take in an office ID, and it will do kitchens where the office ID equals the office ID, and I just want the ID and the name. And here, so we were always referencing the collection view value in the past, the selected item. In this case, I'm going to reference the select component value to get the specific ID. So if I click on Ham's building, now I get a list of kitchens corresponding to Ham's building. So for the kitchen, now I'll go ahead and swap over to query5.data.map.kitchens.map. And I'll go ahead and get the ID of these kitchens. And similarly, I'll do the same thing to get the values, the names. So truthfully, I don't know if I have too much time to finish plugging in this form, but once we finish populating all these different selects and inputs, what we'll do is now we want to plug it in. So one thing that we can do is actually add in a Fab component, which is just kind of a button that always floats there on the screen. And we can make this the add request button. And on click of this button, what I want to do is navigate to that screen where we created the form. So it'll be add request screen. So wherever I am, or specifically on this page, and I can add a similar Fab to all other pages, I can basically click on this bottom right-hand side to go ahead and add a request, in which case it'll plug into the rest of the app that we showed today. So I know we're short on time. Thank you all for coming. Please, ask us any questions via email, via support. You can contact us at support@retool.com. We're really excited for folks to be building mobile applications. We think that there's a lot of different use cases for the on-the-go type of use case that we're excited to see and learn from. So thanks all for joining today, and I hope you all have a great rest of your week.